Hello there. The week in review. So this week in clinic has been interesting to say the least. A few client presentations I'll highlight for you just to give you a sample of what goes on. First client has the sensation that his right leg does not want to do stuff for him. It's turned out it feels like it doesn't move very well. It feels like it loses power. Doesn't move freely through the rest of his body. Feels like his shoulders are in odd positions. Feels like he loses power overhead. So he's got a few bits and pieces going on. And it turned out that he'd been told he had a flat foot. He'd been told he had a hip ligament issue, and what we could see really clearly through his movement is that he did not want to move that hip. It was moving around that hip rather than moving it. And that was kind of causing a lot of adaptation through his rib cage, through his lower limb, etc. So with a little bit of treatment, helping him to understand what's happening, we managed to get his hip to move again, and he left with some movements that created more safety through his hip. So left with an ability to compress and decompress that hip, move it through its range of motion. As a result of that, he now feels like he's got even pressure on his feet. He feels like he's got more of an ability to move his pelvis and ribcage naturally. His shoulders, which felt like one was kind of sitting really far forwards, they naturally start to sit in a little bit of a different position than they did, because he's now not accommodating for his hip through his ribcage. He's not adapting and avoiding movement because of his hip, so his ribcage can now rest in a more centered, natural position, whatever you want to call it. That felt a bit different for him. I worked with a runner as well who I've been working with for quite a while now. He's a very, very high level runner and has had a lot of issues with his hamstrings, with his Achilles, with his knees, lots of little bits and pieces, niggly bits and pieces that were keeping him out of run and basically derailed his whole season on and off. He's recently just hit a 5k and a 1500 meter PB, so he's back training. He's doing really well, and he's still having a little niggle here and there. And this time I saw him, it was one of his knees was sore, and we worked. He's quite in tune with his body. He's able to tell me when it hurts, what movements he feels like are limited, and he's got quite a high level of awareness of his movement, which is really useful for someone like me, because I can translate that into what I see and maybe what we need to work on really, really quickly. He felt like his right foot, it wasn't moving well, so he felt like he couldn't pronate and flatten his foot properly. He couldn't move through his ankle well, and that was translating up, and we thought that's maybe where some of the issue with his knee was coming from. Turned out that an old wrist sprain on the opposite side, when he would get some movement back through here, it would allow his opposite side foot to start to move more freely. And that's a walking gait relationship. When you load into your right leg, for example, your left hand should be swinging forwards and supinating your wrist, and supination of his wrist was the problem. We desensitized that, we got some movement back through there, and then we mapped it back down to his foot, and now he left with a foot that felt like it should do it was doing what it should do, Looking forward to see what happens for him over the next couple of weeks as he builds up again towards the full training schedule. So many cases. Another lady, late 40s, early 50s, neck problems, back problems, hip pain, loads of scans, diagnoses were thrown around. She'd been told she had fibromyalgia, she had cortisone injections, she had physio, she had been to see rheumatologists. We've had her moving more or less pain free, and she went on holidays and was walking up and down really steep hills, and it caused a little flare up of symptoms for her. And it's not something that maybe gets talked about enough, is that for her that maybe was just a little bit more intense activity than she was currently able to handle. So she's in a process of building her conditioning and building her ability to tolerate loads through her lower limb, and that's helping with almost all the sensations with her knees, with her lower back, etc. Just because you start a treatment process or you start seeing progress with your symptoms, it doesn't mean that your nervous system just stops caring. It doesn't mean that it just decides to not do its job of assessing each moment and saying, is that safe? Is that something that I need to be wary of? And once we kind of helped her to get her head around that and see that actually this is a flare up because maybe there's a little bit too much too soon and our nervous system's doing its normal job. It takes away the fear. It takes away the fear that all the symptoms are coming back. It takes away the fear that you're going to stop making progress and you're going to go backwards and all that sort of stuff, and it becomes a speed bump that you move past rather than a mountain you run into and bounce backwards from. She can see it now as a natural kind of progression to what's been happening for her, and I fully anticipate that this stuff is going to get less intense and less severe over time in terms of any flare-ups that she has. So we get a lot of interesting different bits and pieces going on here, and I think if one message I would say to you, and some people are probably going to laugh at this, is that I think pain is perfect. Given the experiences you've had in the past, given the belief systems you might have, the learnings, the understandings, given the injuries you might have had, your nervous system has a default level of protection that's inbuilt, and it also learns to protect you more if you have possibly had negative experiences or have had previous injuries. So a lot of times when people come in and they're in a lot of pain, that is their nervous system's best response right now. And it's a challenge to get that best response right now and dissect that and figure out what's influencing that in a negative way. Start to make some change to that, because when we can get that to happen, their best response right now becomes one that's less painful, that allows them to do more, that gives them back quality of life. So if you're someone who needs a little bit of help with symptoms, you've been on that merry-go-round of seeing different professionals, maybe getting your injections, having a surgery, doing different types of treatments, and you're still looking for help, you're the exact sort of person I see every week, and I'd love to help you, so please get in touch. And just know that it can change. If you don't have that belief that it can change, it might not ever. We have to start there first and start building and understanding what's influencing your body. Once we can get to that, then we'll start making some progress. So if you're that person, get in touch. I'd love to help you. Have a good day. Have a good weekend.